does all the work for me.
Cool.
Okay, so I don't remember what I typed you before. Mostly I just recognized the name in the email. So do you want to sort of give me a little bit of a starting spot here?
Yeah, so at the end, you kind of narrowed it down. You said it's kind of narrowed it down to one or two types, which was either ESTP or ISFJ, and that was based off. Well, I think what you said at the time was it's either ESTP with better SI than you would expect for ESTP, or it's ISFJ with better TI than you would expect for ISFJ. But leaning towards, well, in the end, we were pretty sure it was ESTP because I wasn't TE polar, which didn't fit with ISFJ.
Right off the bat, talking to you, I get a little bit more of an NI vibe off of you than an SI vibe, which we'd expect for ESTP more than ISFJ. Yeah. I mean, you can see both knowledge functions in a 4-5 person, so it's not a very good way to tell people's type. But okay, so and then since we've had that session and you've gone through your life noticing yourself paying attention, what have you noticed?
Well, one of the things I wanted to ask about was the SI, because I think one of the things that one of the other reasons you thought not ISFJ was when I talk about do I have a schedule and do I kind of live my life by a schedule, and do I think about what I've got to do that day? And I said I don't in the session, which I don't. It's true. Like if I've got like a calendar for work, but like sometimes meetings pop up and I don't realize that they're in there until right before they happen. However, I have noticed that if there is something novel that I need to do that day, I do schedule it quite a lot. If I've got to get a flight or something, I'm pretty careful about being on time and like working backwards from like when I need to be there and all that kind of stuff, and I'll have like all the boarding passes and all that kind of stuff printed out. But that's what I was kind of interested in SI, because some of the descriptions that go with SI, like I think I've got a pretty good memory for my own life, like autobiographical memory, and I do accumulate like a lot of facts. I don't know if that is anything SI related. But then at the same time, like I say, I don't really live my life in a kind of a structured, scheduled way. Like I've never had like an appointment book.
Well, how are you with objects? That you like? Do you gather objects?
No, I don't really have collections of things. I'll get something I like and then kind of wear it out and get a new one.
Okay. Do you manage clutter? Does clutter bother you?
So I would definitely prefer an uncluttered environment, but I don't usually achieve that.
You have a lovely uncluttered background here.
Yeah, you can't really see what's off camera. There's loads of stuff. I mean, when I was this is like a new room we've just put in the loft, but for most of COVID, the only room I could work out of was my son's bedroom, because it was the only room with internet that you could shut the door. And like everyone commented that I would always have like, because other people have like curated bookcases and stuff behind them and they're really careful about looking good, and I always had like piles of stuffed toys and ironing boards and all that kind of crap behind me. But this looks a little bit, looks a lot cleaner. But before we had kids, I'd actually got to a point of, when I was younger, I was really messy. Then I got to the point of being much tidier, and then now I have less time. It's gone back to kind of chaos again.
Did you paint that yourself?
No, we had the guys who because it was a total like loft conversion. So totally from scratch. So they did everything.
Okay. It looks like a really pro job.
Yeah, it's decent, isn't it?
Like where they put the tape and stuff, the lines are clean.
Yeah. Yeah, because I had to do that once where I was painting that corner between the ceiling and the wall. And from the ground, it looked like a straight line. But when you go up there, it was kind of curved. And like there was no, you keep going up there and putting tape on and painting it. And whichever way you painted it, the line would look like it was creeping to one way or the other. It drove me mental.
Okay, so I mean, are you inclined to tackle those kind of tasks yourself, generally speaking, or do you usually want to outsource them to somebody whose job it is?
It depends. It depends. Depends what it is. I like doing it. If I've got time and I think I know how to do it, I would do it myself. If it's something with a big downside if it goes wrong, like anything involving like electrics or plumbing or anything like that, I'd get someone
in. Okay. Well, one way potentially to better distinguish has to do with, I guess, whether you provide a lot of examples for when you're explaining things. So, like, can you relate to me some instances where you've had to explain something to somebody and recall for me that process a bit?
where I've had to explain something.
Yeah, like somebody didn't understand something. Like,
yeah,
I don't understand why the French lost the Battle of Waterloo.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I was just thinking. I mean, I do that I need to explain stuff for work quite a lot. So I have up until recently, I worked in advertising for a lot of years. And I generally would find if you were trying to explain why this was a good idea for this particular brand, using an existing example of a previous ad campaign is usually the best way to do it, because it's a lot easier to wrap your head around a concrete example.
And what do you think, if I were going to ask you to explain to me what makes something the right decision for an ad campaign? Like, let's say I'm trying to advertise Marlboro cigarettes.
Yeah.
And I've got a bad idea. I'm like, my campaign idea is Marlboro cigarettes. You should smoke them because they're the best cigarettes to smoke that taste the best.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that campaign?
Yeah. So the two things that would make it a good campaign is, one, it would be something that was based on the specific challenge for your brand in the market. So if you're the biggest brand in a market, your challenge is different than if you are like a smaller brand in the market. So if for example, if you're Coke, you can do very generic ads about the benefits of soft drink, which is that they're enjoyable and they're refreshing. Because if you've got 90% of the market, if you bring 10 more people into the market, you'll get 9 of those customers. Whereas if you're a smaller brand, you need to specifically steal customers off Coke. So yours needs to be why your cola is better than Coke's. And then so yes, there's whether you're trying to grow the market or whether you're trying to grow your share of the market. And then the other thing it's got to be something that's relevant to the customer. So if you to use your example, where it's just like, it's the best cigarette. If I'm perfectly happy with my brand of cigarette, there's no reason there for me to bother trying your brand of cigarette. So it would just this, I don't know, you use an example around like it's a better taste or whatever it was, or whatever you felt was going to make that person try that brand of cigarette. I mean, obviously it's much more subtle than that. So Marlboro, back when they were advertising, they tied their brand to this kind of rugged image of cowboys and stuff in the West, and it was kind of, that made it relevant because, you know, someone working in a office job and in a cubicle, you know, feeling under the boot of his boss, and actually maybe smoking a Marlboro cigarette made them feel like they were a bit freer for a short period of time or whatever. I don't know exactly how they did it, but I wouldn't say that the two things would be, it needs to deliver on your business need, and it needs to make your product relevant to the customer.
Do you think that, like, it's always a good idea to put a sexy lady in the ad?
No.
No.
No, I mean, especially nowadays, like, that actually causes more of a backlash than drawing people in. Although, having said, you know, there've been some really controversial ads doing that, and that's actually probably got those brands loads of publicity. But generally speaking, no.
See, it seems like a good tagline for a product would be, "You'll see more titties."
Yeah, I mean, you could probably get away in the 70s or 80s. You could probably get away with that, and someone probably did something similar to that. But yeah, I don't think
Marlboro Reds, "You'll see more titties." Huh. You know, of course, you could get maybe accused of fraudulent advertising there, because
yeah,
you're not necessarily going to see more titties.
Yeah. Can you even still advertise? Because they banned advertising of cigarettes like years ago in the UK. Can you still advertise in America?
No,
they're
not. You're not allowed to advertise cigarettes anymore. I remember when a long time ago, I did this review podcast called Box Monitor. And I actually contacted Camel Cigarettes and tried to get them to give me free cigarettes to advertise for them. And they said they couldn't do it. They actually talked to me and said, "No, we can't give you anything to advertise for us. It's illegal."
Yeah. I mean, they banned it like years and like decades before I worked in advertising, but by the end of it, they basically weren't legally allowed to say anything about the cigarettes. So they would end up just doing these billboards, which were like these really wacky, like abstract art things with the packet of fags as part of the art, because it was like the only way they could get it noticed.
I think the best advertising slogan of all time is "Alive with Pleasure." That's this tagline for kind of menthol cigarettes,
right?
It's like, that's fantastic. I want to be alive with pleasure. What a great expression.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so do you spend a lot of time at work? Like, are you like one of those 50-hour a week, 60-hour a week guys, or do you try to keep it to your home more?
Yeah, I recently changed jobs to something similar to advertising, but not advertising anymore, just because I wanted to have more time away from work. It's definitely like, work is definitely to me like a means to earn a living rather than like a end into itself, for sure.
Do you do the visual stuffs when you did advertising? Do you draw the pictures too, or?
No, so I wasn't a creative. I was a strategist. So they would be the people who would be sort of coming up with the brief for the creatives. So it would be like, we need it, kind of almost like coming up with a concept that sits behind the ad, and then the creatives come up with like a creative interpretation of that.
Okay. So thus far in listening to your answers, not this is very definitive, but your answers sound more NI front stack than SI front stack, in the sense that you tend to end your answers at an appropriate point.
Yeah.
Like they're kind of complete. SINE people tend to do this thing that I'm doing right now, where I'm not really sure where I'm going with my words. So can you tell me?
Funny enough, actually, when I was answering those questions, I was kind of aware that actually, yeah, I'm not giving many specific examples here, because you said it'd be how specific you are, and I actually just answering the stuff, I was thinking, yeah, this is not specific. This is kind of general principles.
Okay. What's your experience with medical stuff? Like, do you have an opinion about like going to the doctor? You're very, very reliable about making your yearly checkup, blah, 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 blah. Or do you think I only go to the doctor when I'm sick and only if I'm really sick?
Yeah, I would go to the doctor if I'm sick. A few times when I was younger, I kind of ignored stuff. Like I had appendicitis, which I thought was indigestion for like about a day and a half, and then I had to go to hospital and have my appendix out. So after that, I thought I'd just get stuff checked out.
I also had appendicitis.
Yeah.
It was back when I was in elementary school.
Wow.
Did you have a long recovery time from that?
I was actually quite lucky, because by the time I had it done, they could do it with like keyhole surgery. So they only take, so the scar I've got is only like less than an inch, whereas I know before it used to be like a 6-inch scar or whatever. So I was kind of lucky. It took a few weeks. Apparently it had gangrene on it when they got it out, because I'd left it for a while. But yeah, it wasn't too bad.
Okay. Do you recall any physical injuries, like sprained ankle or broken arm or anything like that you incurred?
Yeah, I remember you asked me this last time. I broke my nose boxing a few years ago. I've definitely sprained my ankle. I've dislocated my shoulder. Broken toes a couple of times. But yeah, I've been lucky. I haven't really had any like broken leg or anything like that.
Okay. How about, can you talk to me about your like health habits? Like, is it important for you to exercise regularly? Do you care a lot about your diet, like managing which things you eat and don't eat? Or do you just eat what you want to when you're hungry?
So I've always liked exercising. I've always liked keeping fit. Just this last couple of years with COVID, then followed by having a second child and just not having any time, it's probably been the longest period I've gone without exercising regularly. So yeah, I generally would always stay in shape.
COVID really changed things, huh?
The kids do.
Like COVID. I mean, COVID really changed everybody's life dramatically, huh?
Yeah, well, I had it before COVID. I was in good shape. Then, during COVID, I started doing what everyone else did, because we were allowed out for half an hour a day for exercise. So I'd run every day. So that kept you to a certain level. Then I had this kind of breathing issue, which was from having the broken nose, and in the end, I had to have my septum kind of. They put some more cartilage in there because it had become bent. But it gave me really bad breathing problems, and I couldn't really sleep without kind of waking up every hour or so. So I couldn't exercise for quite a long time. And then with all the lockdowns and stuff, I was never able to get back into the level of fitness I had before COVID. And yeah, still since then.
Did you get back to breathing normally?
Yeah, the surgery was actually really, really helpful. Because I'd had it, I broke it, and then I had it. They did an operation on when I first broke it because it's kind of gross, but the septum was like actually sticking a bit out the bottom, so you could kind of see a white bit at the bottom of my nose. So they had to put it back in again, but I could still never really breathe out of one side of my nose. And I don't know what happened over the COVID, but it really the breathing got really bad, and then they said it kind of was really broken. So they put, like I said, like a bit of artificial cartilage in there, and that's totally changed like how I sleep and stuff now.
Well, they could have just said you need to start doing a lot of cocaine.
Yep.
And that might have cured it as well. You know, apparently, if you do enough cocaine, your septum will melt.
Yeah. There's been a few rock stars like that, isn't it, where they've sneezed and their whole septum's come out or whatever.
Yeah. I heard the song White Lines on the radio yesterday. I haven't heard that song in a long time.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so you have children, or a child or children?
I've got 2 kids.
2 kids. Okay. And how did you experience assuming they're older than 1 or 2 now, how did you experience the period of time when they were still little and interfering with your sleep a lot? Did it bother you?
So the older one is 5. The younger one is 10 months.
Oh, so they are still very little.
She's still in the kind of wake up in the night phase. Yeah, it's tough. It's a bit better the second time around because you know that there's like an end to it because you've done it before. But yeah, it is really difficult, not because there's nothing you can really do about it. You can't, like, the only thing you can do is go to bed earlier, but there's nothing else you can do. There's no control over how much sleep you get. But it's just one of those things, isn't it? Just got to kind of cope with it and get through it.
So if you haven't slept very well because the baby's kept you up some, but you have to go to work in the morning,
yeah,
are you going to prefer to get up early anyway and be able to take your time getting ready to go to work, or are you going to try to squeeze in the last few minutes of sleep and hurry to go to work?
I would probably say I would get up. I'd rather get up earlier. It doesn't really work out like that anyway, because I usually have to get up with her about between like 4:30 and 6 o'clock anyway. So I'm usually up anyway. But in normal times, I would definitely get up earlier and give myself a bit more time.
That's early to get up, 4:30 to 6.
Yeah. It depends if she goes back to sleep again. If she goes back to sleep again at like 5, I might go back to bed. If she,
do you have
sorry, go on.
Do you have a long commute?
It's about an hour, but I can work from home if I need to, so I use that a lot.
So how is the new job different than your old job?
It's kind of a similar thing to advertising, but it's not actually doing advertising campaigns. It's more like working on the sort of branding side of things, so like the kind of design and stuff. But it's different in that it's a much smaller place. The place I was at before was like probably like nearly 400 people, whereas this one's like 25 people.
400 people to advertise stuff?
Yeah, it was like several different agencies in the one group. So and then they just had a lot of big clients. So yeah, it was a lot of people.
So I guess if you're making ads for like Coca-Cola or something, then are you responsible then for the filming of the ads as well? Or?
Yeah, the agency. So the agency they'll basically get it to a point of like a script and a storyboard. Then you bring on a production company, a director, and the director will do like a treatment for you get a couple of different directors who will do treatments, and you pick because the two, giving it to two different directors could come out with quite different results. So you pick the director that you prefer, and then the ad agency will carry on kind of managing it through that production process, even though the production company is actually doing the filming itself.
And then how does the client decide if it worked?
It'll go through research. So they basically put it in front of the target audience and get their reactions to it before it goes on air.
Is it very clear when you're done with a project how successful it was?
It should be, yeah, because you should have like measurements in place so that you know if it's delivering what it should be delivering. So to use the Coke example again, with a company like Coke, they'll be so big and sophisticated that they'll be able to attribute an uplift in sales or in brand perceptions to that campaign by tracking it during that period of the campaign. For smaller clients, often it's not as easy to tell because they don't have the money to track everything.
I see. Oh. And of course, I guess if you're small enough and it's your first ad campaign or something, then you'll either see a big burst in increased sales or you won't, huh?
Yeah, especially if you're small, you'll be able to tell because if you're just in one country and you're selling one product, for example, then you'll be able to tell an uplift. It's obviously if you're in multiple different countries and you've got loads of different products and all that kind of stuff, that's where it gets more complicated.
Okay, so let's say I'm a client. I'm representing the Broccoli Advisory Board.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to get people to eat more broccoli in general. Not any particular brand of broccoli, but just broccoli.
Yeah.
What's your walk me through your thinking on how to help me increase broccoli awareness.
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing you'd want to be really clear on is what the end result needed to be. Because is it people who don't eat broccoli currently eating broccoli, or is it getting people who currently eat broccoli to eat more of it?
Because I want people to go to the store when they're planning their dinner, and they're gonna make pot roast and carrots and peas. I want them to replace those carrots and peas with broccoli. Okay.
Yeah, cool. So that was the second question is you have to kind of figure out why they're not doing what you want them to do at the moment. And so from what you're saying, it sounds like was it the carrots and peas that are more associated in their minds with casseroles than broccoli is?
Right? Yeah, that when people put a vegetable with their meat, they're more likely to put carrots or peas than broccoli. Yeah. And I'd like them to change that habit and put broccoli instead of carrots and peas.
Yeah. So what you'd need to do is you'd need to just really understand what thought process people go through, if any, in order to pick their vegetables. Because the thing about it is that until you speak to people, you just never know. And when you talk to people, you can actually find out something that you weren't expecting. So, like, for example, Porsche famously once wanted to tell people more and more about their cars and how brilliant their engineering was, because they were like, I think people just don't understand how good our cars are. And then the agency spoke to a bunch of people, and it turned out people weren't buying Porsches because they think if people see you driving a Porsche, they think you're an asshole. So they did, their campaign was actually more about the joy of driving, because people could accept that someone would buy a car because they love driving, and it kind of changes the image rather than a car you buy to show off. So you'd need to talk to people about the process that they go through when they're choosing a meal and how they kind of select their vegetables. But assuming you've done all that, you then need to pick a particular angle on broccoli that you know is going to appeal to that particular group. So it might be that actually you could, oh, sorry, excuse me 1 second. Sorry, so let's say, for example, you do it and you realize that people think that all green vegetables are good, right? And then you can actually say, actually, broccoli is the green vegetable. So say you figure out people's biggest interest when they're picking a vegetable for their meal is that they want to give their family some good vitamins and minerals and those kind of things. And so in their head, all green vegetables are good. And then you might then need to find a fact about broccoli. And so actually, broccoli is the green vegetable with the most vitamin C per ounce. And then you could kind of build your campaign around that. I mean, that'd be quite a boring campaign. That's quite a functional thing, but
it could be broccoli, the greenest vegetable.
Yeah, something like that.
Maybe it is more green than other vegetables.
Yeah.
Oh, I really like when hearing about this Porsche thing though. I'm envisioning a campaign where somebody drives up in a Porsche and goes, "Hey, here, you dropped this," and then like hands it back to them. Like, "Oh, thanks. I didn't realize I dropped it." And then they drive away, and the person goes, "Wow, people who drive Porsches sure are nice."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's where you have to use a bit of lateral thinking.
So wait a second, people think Porsche drivers are assholes, and then he's just full frontal assault on the idea. I mean, people in Porsches saving puppies, like all kinds of super non-asshole things.
Yeah, just like Morgan Freeman driving his Porsche.
Advertising is funny because it's so not an argument, It's like you're not trying to convince people with reasoning at all.
No.
Almost never, it seems like.
Yeah, people won't remember the details of the advert. They'll just remember how it made them feel roughly. It's kind of in the purest form, which is not always the case now, because obviously a lot of stuff you're buying is not off the supermarket shelves anymore. But back in the day, you're really just trying to make your thing top of mind when people are going through the supermarket and they have a few seconds to make a decision and they just pick yours off the shelf rather than any other one.
Okay, can you talk to me about events from your own past, like childhood or teenagehood or whatever, that you consider formative moments? Like, for example, once I was walking from Edinburgh to Canterbury with my dog Toby, and I came across a couple of ruffians on the roadside, like that kind of story.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. This is just for some reason this is the first one that came to mind. It's not like a massive like turning point in my life as such, but it set a bit of a pattern. I remember once I was about sort of 12 or 13, and we were playing basketball at school, and the PE teacher was trying to get me to do this particular move, which was to just basically do a layup, but you had to kind of wait behind a line. You had to kind of, he was trying to say, "Don't cross the line before I've released the ball," and I kept crossing the line, and he kept making me go back and do it again. And like when some people are watching you, you get kind of more and more nervous and more kind of like you're going to fuck it up. And also at that age, like everything seems really important, doesn't it? And I just couldn't get it right. And then that weekend, I thought, like, I don't want to fuck that up again. So I went to the park where there was, funny enough, a basketball court, and I just practiced that move for a few hours until I had it like exactly right. And then I could always do that move from then on. But I think that kind of set a thing in my head of like, I would always then tend to kind of, if it's a new skill, I know I'm not someone who's going to get it first time, but I know if I can go away and practice it on my own, I can get it. Not perfect, but I can get it. I can always get it, and that's something that's kind of like always stuck in my head as something I've always applied.
I mean, that sounds like very SI forward strategy, potentially a workaround to TE. So if you're an ISFJ, you should test polar on TE.
Yeah.
So I don't remember what those results looked like, but let me ask a couple of TE questions and see if it's informative here.
Yeah.
Can you walk me through solving the problem of I don't know if you guys have these kind of screen doors over in England where it's like a screen door that you open it to go out, but then when it closes more slowly than it doesn't go slam shut. It's got like a spring that would make it slam shut, but instead of slamming shut, it goes. We have
not seen the base, but I could kind of imagine it. Yeah.
All right. Well, imagine a problem where the screen door sticks.
Yeah.
So it's supposed to close all the way when you open it all by itself, but the thing sticks, and so you have to then push it again to make it close. You want to fix that problem.
Yeah.
How do you go about fixing it?
Okay. Well, I suppose the first thing would be to look for like obvious stuff that shouldn't be there. So if there's something jamming it, like a twig or whatever, if there's anything that could be removed. If it's not that, the next thing would be to look for anything that's sort of like obviously broken. So I don't know if there's a bit of I don't know how it works, but if like there's a bit of the rubber or something that it slides on has kind of come loose or something and is causing it to jam, and then you can kind of look at fixing that. If there's nothing obviously jamming it and there's nothing obviously broken, I guess then you've got to then sort of try and figure out how the mechanism actually works and try and figure out what could have gone wrong with it. So
that's pretty good TE right there. That's pretty stout sounding TE. Now, granted, that's not a normal kind of TE question I ask. Let me try to ask another couple of TE questions. But
yeah, okay, cool.
Can you break down the task of building an outhouse into 6 steps?
Yeah, I can try. I've never built an outhouse, but I'll have a think about it.
Neither have I.
Yeah. Okay. Dig the foundations, lay the foundations, build the walls, add the roof, add the windows, add the door.
You didn't make any hole for the poop to go in.
For the what to go in?
You didn't make any holes.
That kind of outhouse. We just meant like a shed. Sorry.
Oh, in America, I don't know how it's used in England, but in America, outhouse specifically means a bathroom that's outside with a hole in the ground. But that's fine. Okay. You did a great job. You did a great job of 6 steps of building literally an outhouse that's outside of the house. Yeah. I guess maybe it's not always used to mean a bathroom in America either. But is it used more generally than that in England?
Yeah, like an outbuilding or an outhouse is like a shed or something. But yeah, I think maybe in the past when people had more outdoor toilets, they would have been more commonly used for that.
Okay, cool. That to me, that's pretty definitive right there. Like your TE is clearly not polar.
Yeah.
Based on those 2 answers, but that's just 2 questions. What are your own what have you thought about the TE question yourself?
Well, do you know what? I was pretty sure I'm not TE polar, because I'm pretty sure my wife is after our discussion, because there was a thing last year where our boiler, like it's got like an electric thermostat, like a portable one, and that broke. And so then the only way you could turn it off or on was by pressing the buttons in a particular sequence. But because they weren't really designed to do that, there was no UX. You had to know what it was doing. So you had to turn it on to wake it up, and then you had to know. And we went through so many like attempts to try and make it so that she could turn the boiler on and off, like literally writing stuff down, and it just never stuck. And so that made me wonder if she was TE polar. So I asked her the cigarette question around how many steps are there, and would you do to smoke a cigarette, or talk me through it. And she was like, well, I think it starts by like thinking about a cigarette. And then she was like, no, it starts with having an alcoholic drink that then makes you think about a cigarette. And I was like, how many steps do you reckon it would be? And she was like, at least 10. And I was like, maybe that's what TE polar is like, and that's not what I'm like.
That's hilarious. Here's an example of TE polar. Rachel's TE polar. These things, they screw on like this, right? So once it's here, whatever you do sideways when it's screwed on all the way, it won't bend the cartridge that goes inside of it won't be able to go side to side once this thing is on. But Rachel explained to me the other day that she thought that the reason these things eventually break down is because when she's doing it like this, she pushes this from side to side. Even though it just makes absolutely no sense. It's like, it can't move that way, Rachel. That's why it's got all this big threading and all this bolt here, so that precisely so that it cannot move any way other than to push directly down onto the thing. Whatever you do side to side doesn't make any difference at all.
Yeah.
Anyhow, that's the E-polar for you.
Yeah. I mean, the funny thing is that my wife's often actually better at getting stuff done than I am. Sometimes it's just that she'll do it in a weird way that doesn't make sense to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Rachel just quietly does things sometimes. When I do things, it's a big we have to send out announcements. I'm going to be doing something soon. We have to discuss it a great deal. We have to make notes on the fact that it's being done. Anyway, okay, so the thing is, that TE, that was actually rather quite revelatory, because when you described, I not asked the question about like the broken door thing, but that is in fact how one goes about TEing something like that. Is you look at it, you look at it and you go, okay, what's wrong with this, and you mess with it, you push it this way, you push it that way, you see what happens. That's why TE is an interface function. It's not like It's not like action deliberation. You can't decide ahead of time how you're going to fix the door and then do it. You have to be informed by the door how to fix it.
Yeah.
So, okay, I feel pretty confident that you're not an ISFJ. And I think ESTP is the type that makes the most sense for you based on the fact that you have such easy access to both NI and SI, but seem to default consistently to NI. That's 4 or 5 knowledge functions. Do you have any concerns about ESTP aside from ISFJ as an alternate possibility?
So yeah, I had just some questions really about it, because after we had the session, because I hadn't been thinking about ESTP at all, because I'd never thought of myself as an extrovert, and like most people, I thought I was I feel like loads of people come in thinking that they're an intuitive, and actually it turns out they're a sensing type. So I'd never really considered that type, and so I went back and I watched as many of your typing sessions as I could find where people had been typed as ESTP, because I wanted to see kind of how you explain the stuff to them. And one thing I did notice is it seems to be a type that everyone, or a lot of people, are surprised by and kind of struggle to get their heads around. I guess probably partly it's hard because neither the polar function or the dominant function is easy to demonstrate, I guess. So it's hard to kind of show people that
and ESTPs are skeptical too by nature.
Right. Yeah, so that makes sense. So the big thing, I guess, is I think the reason a lot of people, or the reason I'd never really thought of ESTP was that I don't think I really understood what SE is. And I get the feeling, my understanding is that you have quite a different definition of SE than a lot of the SE stuff that's out there, which is all very kind of like stereotypically, risk-taking, being impulsive, all that kind of living in the moment.
I think it's just concretization. So, like making real an idea rather than just continuing to talk about it. That's SE versus NE. What one good example of the difference between an ESTP and an ENTP is my mom was sent to the hospital here in Arcadia from her nursing home, which is more or less here in Arcadia.
Yeah.
And then they called me, the Arcadia hospital called me and told me that they wanted to send my mom to a Kaiser hospital. The Kaiser wanted her in their system, which is, it's like, right. I don't know. But anyway, the point is that they wanted to send her to Panorama City. So I said, okay, well, send her to Panorama City, I guess. If she has to be in that kind of hospital because that's her insurance, then, and then Panorama City calls me and they say, why are you sending her to Panorama City? That's so far away. We're just going to send her right back to her nursing home in Arcadia. And I'm like, well, then I guess that's what you're going to do. There's no reason for me to go to Panorama City. And they say, well, there's no reason for your mom to go to Panorama City. But, I already told the other hospital that they should send her to Panorama City because they told me whatever, right?
Right.
And so I eventually talked to my daughter about this. And she says, why don't you just call the Arcadia hospital and tell them to discharge her to the nursing home?
Right.
Which makes perfectly good sense. But the problem is, I got caught up in all these various arguments and conversations with these various people. And as a consequence, was here argumentationally. Okay. Yeah. So the obviousness of just call them and tell them to discharge her back to the nursing home never even occurs to me, because that's about concrete realities. Whereas ENTP is all about abstract realities.
Yeah.
And both types are perfectly capable of intellectually parsing the abstract stuff. But for ESTPs, it's under a frame of making shit actually happen.
Yeah.
Real impacts. For ENTPs, it's under the frame of explaining things.
Yeah.
that's best way to just leave it like that. Explaining things. That's what it's under the frame of.
So obviously, because you often use yourself as a good example of NE, in that you're kind of like making a lot of you're kind of ideating about stuff and producing a lot of stuff, and not necessarily in like an ordered way. It's kind of, like you kind of have to get the ideas out there. Is there like an SE equivalent of that? Like what would the SE classic SE Dom person look like?
Well, like Delilah has told me before that when she's stressed out, she likes to go drive around.
Yeah.
And like do complete errands or tasks or stuff like that, even.
Yeah.
That it makes her feel less stressed out. To me, driving makes me like it makes me tired, but mostly it makes me like feel as though part of my action energy is being sucked away by this thing I have to do.
So I can't think without walking.
You like to think and walk? Okay, well there you go.
Yeah, that'd be an SE thing. Like I really have to kind of, obviously I can sit still and think, but the more I'm thinking, the more I have to move around.
Yeah, and whereas I really don't like to be jostled. I'm not a fan of motion, really.
Yeah.
So I mean I like little motions. I'm wiggly, but I don't like I'm easily made car sick and or generally feeling like there's too much stimulation. But ultimately it's like, where are the absolute values for the ESTP versus ENTP? Well, we both have the same F's as absolute values, FE and FI. Ultimately, it kind of always at the very bottom level boils down to FI for us, which is our blind spot, but is what really matters to us and what's important. We might forget about it sometimes, but when things remind us of it, like, my recent shit going on is driving home, like how very much most important my family is. Like keeping the people who are important to me close to me, and being able to spend time with them and remembering to do that. It's not a conscious priority most of the time, but it's ultimately the end of the line, that whatever else happens, that absolute value can't be violated.
Yeah.
So it's and then in the conscious stack, it's like we want to be likable and liked, and have her to varying degrees successful at that. You're gonna naturally be better at it because you're British, and British people are politer than Americans.
Yeah, till they start drinking. Yeah.
But and then the difference then in the absolute values of the perceiving functions is, well, also 4-5 is tricky. So, but regardless, it's you prefer to have the actual experiences, to see concrete results in terms of either money or making those people happy, or winning or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm strangely not particularly impacted by those things. It's weird because I've been a successful debate coach before, where I went through a long period of time where we won a lot, like and it's zero sum. So you go into these competitions where there's a lot of other schools. If you're going to win, all the other schools have to lose to you. So it was very when we were doing really well for a stretch of time, there was a lot of SE reward for me. but I didn't find it very. I didn't find it very satisfying, or something like that. It's like, well, I tell you what ended up happening. I found it constraining at times when I wanted to do, like, what you might call like arty debate cases, and I couldn't really do them because we have to win. I can't do my fun idea about fractal universe destruction. You know, that's where my absolute value came in. I had this great case I wanted to run about fractal universes, where that because everybody, when they imagine a possible universe created as a fractal universe, that somehow prohibiting government surveillance was destroying trillions of potential fractal universes. And of course, we couldn't really run that case because it was too fun.
So it was like impractical as an argument. Yeah.
So it's like my absolute value of N came out in that context. And ESTP might also be a very good debate coach, and they wouldn't be drawn to shit like that. They wouldn't spend much of their time coming up with shit like that. Because it doesn't actually serve any practical purpose in terms of winning debate rounds. Like the other thing I'll say about ESTP, ENTP is my daughter's an ESTP, and I thought for a long time she was an ENTP before I fully understood cognitive functions. And she's still a little skeptical about whether or not she's an ESTP. I still hear her occasionally like roll her eyes in some fashion at the idea that she's less intuitive than I am.
Well, that's what I was wondering, because like I was saying, a lot of the people you typed as ESTP seem to have thought they were intuitive or whatever because they're in their heads a lot, which I could kind of relate to. But I guess is that somewhat TI in that you're just constantly having these arguments in your head about whatever it is, but it's more about what the kind of the. I mean, is it like would the subject matter of what you're thinking about be the difference? It's what you're applying the TI to.
I mean, the thing is, okay, to set aside that question for a second, the one thing to remember is ESTP starts with a experiential function, SE, and then the rest of their stack is metaphysical stuff. So then they go TI, metaphysical parsing, FE, metaphysical interface, NI, metaphysical knowledge. So even though the ESTP's frame of reference is practical or realizing things rather than just potentiating them, it's still the things they're realizing are all metaphysical. So it's like who an ESTP is more concrete and in experiences and of experiences than who an ENTP is. But they're still doing business with all the same kinds of products and currencies. And so because ESTPs are TI and not FI, it means they end up doing a lot of parsing about political, philosophical stuff. But sometimes they don't care about the frame as much. Like Delilah and I have occasional arguments basically over whether or not we should care about the frame more. And she always ends up saying, look, I ultimately care about this thing here, and this portion of the argument resolves that thing, and I don't care about this larger issue that you're talking about because I just need to get this accomplished the way I want to get it accomplished. So that's how it plays out.
Because the thing because after I'd looked at all the other typings and the stuff you had on SE and ESTPs on the channel, I went back and rewatched the typing session, and the bit that does really resonate is that SE and I axis, where you really want to do something, but you don't know what it is that you want to do, so you can't do anything a lot of the time. That is the thing for me. I feel like I kind of often have like a huge amount of energy and stuff to do something, but I just don't know. I can't apply it. I can't figure out what I want to apply it to.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's one of those action type conundrums inherently. We are empowered with more ability to take action than we are with clarity about how to direct that energy. If we had that much clarity about how to direct the energy, we'd be knowers, not actors.
Yeah. And so I know we're basically on time. The one other question I had was, what's the sort of relationship between SE and TE? Because it feels like there's kind of grey areas, because obviously if you want to create an effect or take an action, you quite often have to have a goal in mind. But then at the same time, if you want to achieve a goal, you have to kind of take an action. So
the thing is, the actual TE part is the interface part, as we were talking about. It's the part where you're looking at the thing and you're letting the problem tell you how to fix it.
Okay.
That's the TE part. It's the dance where you know you're using TE when you don't know how long it's going to take.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
The worst thing about things that require TE is you're not even sure if you're going to be able to fix it.
Yeah.
Or so you might start a process of trying to deal with this problem, only to discover you spent 45 minutes and what you've learned is you can't deal with this problem.
Yeah. See, I actually like tinkering around to solve problems if it's not something I have to do. Do you know what I mean? If it's something I have to do for work or something, I hate like open-ended problems that I don't know whether there is actually a solution to them or not. Whereas if it's like someone's like, oh, I don't know, my screen door isn't working, can you help me try and figure out how to do it? If it's not my screen door, that's actually quite enjoyable.
Yeah, if it's somebody else's screen door, you're like, hey, that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that's a problem I kept running afoul of in my talking. When you're talking about doing shit versus TE stuff, the thing about the TE stuff is we might talk about TE as a value, being efficient, or TE as a subject moving through the world. Like, they TE'd this drive-through badly because every time I come around this corner, I have to go carefully like this, or else the bush scrapes my car.
Yeah.
Then I might say somebody TE'd that badly. What I'm really saying is they didn't anticipate well enough how this was going to be used when they were figuring out how they should put it together.
Yeah.
But there's no actual TE there, right? It's like the paying attention doesn't exist in the abstract in the world. That's just a way of us shorthand talking about it. So it makes it confusing, is what I'm saying, unavoidably, because in order to use the language of cognitive functions, we end up abusing the language of cognitive functions.
Yeah.
So,
and is that 6th slot one? Is that the one where you because I like spotting other people's bad TE, I think, but I don't want anyone coming and auditing my TE. Is that
that's critical parent? Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, you ever watch Naked and Afraid?
No, I've never. I saw you mention it in one of the sessions, but I've never seen it.
Okay, well, you've got to watch an episode or two of it, because what you'll find yourself doing is, as you put out the two people naked in the wilderness with nothing, and you'll find yourself going, don't put the fire there. You need to move the fire over there. Oh my God. Why would you point the fish trap that direction? Oh, Jesus. You'll find yourself critiquing how they're doing shit all the time. That's critical parent. But at the same time, when we fuck up RTE, we get mad at ourselves. Like, so if we have an order of operation problem where, oh my God, I'm on step 5 and now I realize I missed step 1.2 and I have to go back to the beginning and redo it all, then that's going to really make us mad.
I see that. Yeah, and with SE, you know, the whole thing of people talk about it being aware of your surroundings and stuff. Is that really SE, or is that just like a stereotype? Because I've got like a pretty bad sense of direction and stuff like that, which is kind of thing that you would, with the way the description's often written, you'd think that's not good SE, if you see what I mean.
I mean, the difference is really between SI and NI, not about SE. So it's like, if I'm SI, then I'm kind of recording my experience all the time in a slightly backwards looking way. Okay. If I'm NI, then I'm more in the moment, in the sense that, well, like Rachel and I go to a yard sale sometime back. She notices this really sweet wheelchair that's way better than the wheelchair my mom currently had at the time, and that we totally needed and should have gotten for sure, and points it out to me, and I end up pointing it out to my dad. He ends up buying it, and hooray, it was a great thing. The thing is, when I was at if my dad had been at that yard sale, he also would have noticed it and bought it, because he would be thinking about that kind of shit at that moment. He was thinking about his ongoing concerns, like my mom and so forth. So it would have been relevant to him. I was not thinking about that stuff. I was thinking about whatever I was thinking about when I was going to the yard sale, like looking for things maybe for my dolls to sit on or something like that. So even though this very relevant thing that's totally worth getting is right in front of my face and screaming at me, my SI is not there. It's over here. And so I don't even notice it. SE NI is a frame of reference that maintains the capacity to notice in the moment things at the expense of keeping track of everything that might be relevant from the past. SI is a frame of reference that's attending to stuff from the past at the expense of being able to notice things in the moment.
Okay.
So SE ANI is more present in the moment, but this whole idea of being super aware of your surroundings and shit is nonsense. It's a frame of reference difference. It's not like some kind of magical hunter skill.
So is the backstack SI why I never know where my keys are?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, like SI ignoring, my daughter was born and we couldn't leave the hospital because she didn't go pee until finally a veteran nurse came on shift and ran some warm water on her leg, and then she let out this huge pee.
Right.
She was born ignoring SI.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's interesting, because the reason I wasn't sure about SI was that I do tend to accumulate like information and stuff from the past. Like I have a lot of useless facts and stuff, but I don't know if that's actually SI or not.
Well, I mean, sure it is. Look, everybody learns things. SI is a learning function, and NI is truly a knowing function. Yeah. So when we relate SI information, it's just stuff that we've learned from either repetition, reading and retaining it, something like that, right?
Yeah.
But it's not. You can't really know things simply by reciting them. To know is to intuit.
Yeah.
It's to assign meaning in a way that makes things more comprehensible.
Yeah.
So everybody epistemologies with both knowing and learning, but some people do it much more one than the other, right?
Yeah.
For both of our types, it's pretty balanced. It's in the 4-5.
Yeah, and I guess that makes sense. So, for example, like with the basketball example I use, like for sports, or I don't know, learning an instrument, or whatever, you're only ever going to learn that through repetition, right? Regardless of what type you are, there's no other way around that.
Yeah, and SI is part of the kind of like the borderland between SE and SI is muscle memory. And that's the most physical kind of SI. The way I use SI and the way that you probably use SI a lot more than, say, an ISTJ would or something, is to recall word-based stuff.
Yeah.
But it's like in its most proto level, it's muscle memory.
Yeah. Yeah. No, the word-based stuff, definitely. Yeah, that's the kind of facts thing. So like I remember, like, you know, long streams of sports information or whatever from the past, which is useless. But I still don't know where my keys are.
That's one of the reasons why ESTPs think they're intuitives, is because they have access to a lot of word data.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's the kind of data they're working with all the time. And they've got that. People sometimes use strong. I don't really like the word strong, but they got that very effective fifth slot thing going on.
Promise this is the final one now, so I keep saying last question. Is there anyone that you like well known that you think is definitely an ISTP?
Somebody well known who's definitely an ISTP. I can't think of anybody.
No, that's okay. I just wondered, just because obviously the people who get typed as ISTPs are usually really in a stereotype of that types. So I just wondered if there was.
I can't think of any. I'll have to think more. They're not an easy type to be able to identify if they're a famous person, because what their giveaway is that they're so non-verbose. They say so little consistently, but if you can't have a chance to actually talk to them, it's hard to just be sure.
I get it. Yeah. Cool, man. Thanks, Eric.
All right, cool. Well, thanks a lot, and I'll stop this recording now. Are you cool with me publishing this, or would you like me to
go ahead? No worries.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Bye. How do I stop this here? Stop recording.